Interrupt.
I think we're getting right on the line here.
And then went back to schedule edit, which was all the commissions.
Hey, you got
Call the council meeting to order. Confirmation of the agenda. Councillor Hallahan, Councillor Vodden, all in favor? Carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, if any. Councillor Syke.
Yes, Reeve, I'd like to disclose a pecuniary interest for check number 501552 under the 4.2.1 of the bills and accounts. It's made out to my wife, Tiffany Syke, who is a part-time employee of the daycare.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Moving to the consent agenda. Is there any points that councillors would like to be brought out for further discussion?
I move approval of the consent agenda.
Okay, Councillor Vodden, do I have a seconder? Councillor Ritzman-Tenenga, all in favor? Carried. Okay. That I will go to the fire chief to introduce Mark.
Okay. Council, guests, media, this is my new assistant chief, Mark Alderman, and he's here tonight to deliver a presentation following up on the June 19th council report for council regarding the ESDC and the new position at DNH. So thanks for being here tonight, Mark.
Great, thank you, Chief. Okay,
Go ahead, Mark.
thank you. So I have been asked to do a modest presentation. It'll be about 10 to 15 minutes just to provide some feedback to where the municipality may be going with the Emergency Services Training Center. So we've absolutely, as directed, right, we're absolutely looking at it from a business perspective. Right? This needs to be self-sustaining and more. So there's a number of things that we're currently doing, and there's a number of things that we have done over the last while to facilitate and to ensure this process is met. One of the things that we're looking at, and it's not new, but accreditation through the ministry to deliver firefighter programs, specifically National Fire Protection Association certification programs for students across the province. That is there's a lot of potential to bring in revenue and engage a lot of people across the province. Currently, we have there's 15 community colleges in the province that deliver this program. That may come across as a potential red flag. I was fortunate enough to spend 2 years as a program coordinator at a community college looking at one of these programs. And as you know, from a legislative compliance piece, there's a number of different things that those programs are required to do to maintain a community college certificate. So in a nutshell, I don't see them as a comparison or competitive with us. The private career college has a lot more latitude, and there are a few private career colleges in the province. They have a lot more latitude to service the students or prospective clients and to produce revenue. Currently, 3 private career colleges in the province delivering the pre-service program, and there's 2 very, very popular pre-service private career colleges outside of the province. One in Vermilion in Manitoba, and believe it or not, there's an awful lot of people. There's a huge contingent of guys and girls in Ontario heading down to Texas for a pre-service boot camp. So it's a very, very viable business opportunity, which I'd like to chat to a little bit more. From a community college perspective, the tuition is ranging. So I looked at the 15 community colleges. The tuition ranges from $12,900, so just under $13,000, to just under $18,000 per student for that certificate program. So that's a comparative benchmark. The duration is 2 academic semesters, so typically depends on the college. That's 15 to 16 weeks, depending on the academic semester. So that's 30 weeks to 32 weeks, plus the accreditation process. The reason I speak to that is because that's not necessarily a good thing where we've got a lot of guys and girls in their late 20s, early 30s, early 40s, competing for these jobs. Right? They're in the workforce. They're able to take maybe a 3-week vacation or a 3-week leave of absence and get those accreditations through a private career college, right, in a different blended format. So I think that's something that we need to look at. Private career colleges run from 14,000 to 15,000, and again, durations typically 16 weeks for a full in-class program. There is no required partnerships with external stakeholders, which again is something that we can work to our advantage. And the legislative oversight remains with the ministry. The great thing about private career colleges, again, our target group, last time I stood in front of a group of pre-service students at a community college, the average age was 18. So most of the guys and girls sitting in front of me were actually in high school the May prior. From a community college perspective, right, that's fine, right? That's what we do. But in reality, are those guys and girls going to be competitive within the job market? And I suggest not at that time. So from a private career college perspective, we can target people that are older, right, that bring a couple of, some life experiences, again, whether that's in their 20s, certainly 30s, and potentially 40s. So what that does for us is I think that we will put competitive people into the job market, and that's one way of getting, one way of many, of getting a very good reputation across there within the fire service. So private career college, I know it's known as the Emergency Services Training Center. You may choose to remarket it. So I just put there for namesake, North Huron Emergency Services Academy. Right? The academy or school or institute is an accredited term, so we cannot use that until we have permission or approval through the ministry. But if we have a tuition of about $9,600 plus $1,500, not $1,500 would actually be for personal protective equipment for the students, so that they buy their own gear, which allows us latitude in not necessarily servicing it right after they graduate. As contrasted with the $14,000 to almost $15,000 in the comparison private career colleges, I think we're very, very marketable. So regardless of geographically where we're located, that is again, saving $4,000 or $5,000 for a student for tuition. I think that's very, very, very palatable for prospective clients. With a duration of 16 weeks for 2 intakes per year, projected, I foresee a profit of approximately $106,000 per year, running a full-time program with 2 intakes. There's also potential, which is a different curriculum presentation, but there's also potential to do a blended design. Right? Those have become very popular over the years. So what that is, it front end loads a lot of the theory, the classroom work, to online. So again, what that does is we are able to sell a lot of the online programs to prospective students, and they only need to come in and see us about 3 weeks, 3 weeks for a boot camp or 20 days, and that will ensure that we have specific time with them to revisit some of the skills and run them through the certification process. Projected profits there, that's approximately $52,000 per intake, but there is some upfront capital, specifically getting an online e-learning platform up and running. So there are some additional costs to that. So I think this is very viable. So what we have done, day 3 here, We submitted the pre-screening application to the ministry. 2:30 this afternoon, they came back and said, yes, you're required to, I'm laughing here, sorry. Yes, you're required to go through the full application process, which we knew initially. The full application process is not necessarily timely. We do not want to, we don't want to be reactive in this approach. So there's been a number of people that have potentially indicated that we should be engaging other people. So Lisa Thompson may be someone that we may want to approach, right, to facilitate this process through the ministry. Before we move on, so are there any questions or comments about that? Or do you want to hold until later?
Councillor Hodden.
I have a couple of questions. What ministry would you get approval from? Is it college and universities or?
Yes.
Yeah. So MTCU, which is now renamed to the Ministry of Advanced Learning and something or other. Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. So in the meantime, there's a number of other things that we are doing. We did have a partnership here with the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office that went by the wayside over the last while. Chief Ladner and I met with a representative of the Fire Marshal's Office last week. He came down to the Emergency Services Training Center, gave him a tour. The gentleman I used to work with in the fire service in another department, who's now working full-time with that ministry. And we have partnered already with the Fire Marshal's Office to deliver the 1001 firefighter certification programs, level 1 and level 2. So we've got those in the course calendar. They are approved. We've got 7 courses running from April 2018 to June 2019. It is permissible for us to add on surcharges. So again, this is a profit initiative. This isn't just simply servicing firefighters or fire departments or municipal fire services out there. It's on a business design. The other conversation that Chief Ladner and I had with the Fire Marshal's Office was funding. So initially, because we've been out of this for a while from North Huron perspective, they haven't confirmed, but they are very interested in getting us back up and running. So what that does mean, most likely for the first year, there's not going to be any cost to us. Their instructors will come down. They will house their own instructors. They will pay their own instructors. And we'll be busy engaging our department, our municipality, and local municipalities with an associate instructor status, again, so that there's another continuity with instructors being engaged for this service delivery. We're also, so that was one program coordinator of the Fire Marshal's Office. We've also chatted with the manager, the academic manager there, and we're going to have a number of meetings over the next, this month, to deliver all the rest of those programs. That's everything from hazardous materials programs, there's 4 certification programs there, through to technical rope rescue programs, there's 3 programs there, confined space entry, the fire officer program, fire inspector, fire investigator, public fire and life safety educator programs, and fire instructor programs. The majority of those we can deliver in-house. So Chief Ladner and I are certified to deliver, well, actually we balance each other out, but we're certified to deliver most likely everything except 2 of those programs. Okay. Thank you to Richard, but we have been working on updating the ESTC website. So that is also live. I don't think we need to get into that now unless you want to, but it is live. It is still a work in progress, and these courses are up and running on that website. So the other things that we are looking at, we have recently partnered with a training service provider called Lumix Training. That is a consulting company that is operated and owned by a number of people that have worked in emergency management, federal emergency management, and have been fire chiefs across the province. They bring a lot of good, solid training. Again, we've got programs up and running in our calendar that run from this month, right? Scribe and note-taking through to crisis communication that pilots next month, and emergency skills development exercise design, which pilots here in December. So those are already confirmed and up and running. We're also actively pursuing a couple of other things, a few other things. We've got DZ driver training and air brake endorsement. From Councillor Knott has provided me a contact. I've chatted with him. I haven't met that contact yet. He was out in Alberta up until this past week, so I'm hoping to contact him this week or next. We're looking at working at heights. Right? As you know, working at heights is from a regulatory compliance perspective, that really takes us out of the emergency services field. Anyone working at height under the construction regs, right, and working at height 3 meters or more is required by Ministry of Labour, and it's on their hit list. Ministry of Labour inspectors have been going around to all construction projects required to have these certifications. These certifications roll every 3 years, and we can easily deliver that. So we should have that program hopefully approved by sometime in the spring to be up and running at the ESTC. Also, what we're able to deliver is regulatory compliance training for confined space the confined space regs. We can, if that is as simple as acquiring some equipment, and we can have that up and running as well. So I'm able to deliver that. There's no other accreditation required. So what we're doing to actively promote and network, these courses are, and they have been promoted through the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs. So again, right across the province on their website. They are promoted through the Emergency Services Training Center website. Also included and communicated through our database. And this Thursday, Chief Sladden and I have a meeting, so I'll be meeting some of the local fire chiefs, county fire chiefs. So again, we will be engaging those staff members in the same types of conversations and remarketing the North Huron's training center. Number of other things that we can do, right? As you know, there's a lot of courses that we can deliver and market through AMO, through the Canadian Construction Association, a couple of other associations, including Transport Canada. So that is it briefly. If you have any questions.
Councillor Sipe.
Mark, can you, either you or the chief, how long was our absence with the fire marshal's office with our partnership? How long did that absence take place?
As in absence for
Like doing our
courses?
delivering our course. Like how long did we let that slide? I guess.
I think about 7 months, 8 months. There was the bulk of I would say 80% of the course delivery was probably done like 18 months ago, where we were actively teaching numerous courses a month. And I think the last course taught through the Ontario Association Ontario Fire College was about 6 or 7 months ago.
Okay.
And I just want to further that point about Chief Alderman there. There was a point in his PowerPoint presentation about some of the Ontario Fire College courses not being able to be delivered until April 2018. And the reason why that is that their calendar, you have to book courses mid-September, but the calendar just started in April the following year. So that is literally as soon as we can get them. So for the Ontario Fire College.
Councillor Vaughn.
It seems to me to be strange that the fire services doesn't have a lot to say about accreditation of fire service training. Is there expertise in the college or the academic system to make that a worthwhile accreditation?
Yeah, the fire service is a unique beast, quite often as compared with other emergency services, because about 4/5 of the province are volunteer firefighters or part-time. The fire marshal, who has legislative power or authority over training and legislation, has not recommended, nor is he pursuing the requirement of certification. Okay, up until 4 years ago, the Ontario was a little bit unique in that they had their own firefighter certification program that was owned by the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs. Since that time, Ontario has gone to the National Fire Protection Association, which is international, which puts us on the same plate as the rest of Canada and majority of North America, but it isn't a legislative requirement.
Curious.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, the information with regards to private career college, does those profit numbers include, is it just the program or does it include the cost of the building as well, the ESTC building?
No,
It's just the program.
Just the program.
Okay.
Well, if there's no more questions, I'll say thank you for the presentation, Mark. There's a number of things that I think were illuminating to a number of the councillors. Hopefully give the press something to run with, and thank you for clearing up some areas as to what we're doing, what we're trying to do.
Okay, great, thank you, Dave.
Yeah. Okay, moving to 6.7.1, pay equity proposals. Richard?
There is a recommendation for this particular report, and it reads that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the October 2nd, 2017 report of the CAO regarding pay equity proposals, and further that Council accepts the proposal by Gallagher McDowell Associates to undertake a pay equity and compensation review at a cost of $39,080, excluding HST plus travel and out-of-pocket expenses, and further that Council requests Gallagher McDowell Associates organize a project launch meeting with employees at a cost of approximately $3,500, excluding HST plus travel and out-of-pocket expenses, to describe the approach and processes to be undertaken, and further that Council requests Gallagher McDowell Associates present their final report to Council at a cost of approximately $2,100, excluding HST plus travel and out-of-pocket expenses, and further that Council hereby amends the approved 2017 budget by transferring the necessary funds from reserves to fund the applicable costs.
And questions or comments from council?
I'll move for discussion.
Okay, thank you. And that's what I'm going to second. Go ahead.
So in this report, it mentions the conversation about that they will provide support as to us not utilizing consulting in the future. Can you kind of expand on that process? Like, how exactly are they going to provide that information so that is it so that we never have to talk to them again, or is it that we less? I guess that's my question. It sounds like we never have to talk to them again, but I'm assuming that's not the case.
No, essentially their program is designed such to build less reliance on them and on consultants, but not that we'll never have further engagement or consultation with them. But for example, with respect to job descriptions, they've offered to train basically staff to write our own job descriptions. And then, we can send those job descriptions, for example, to them, and they will I'll call edit, they will review them. So, we're not relying on them to write our job descriptions, but they are available to us to give us input, feedback, if we so wish. So that's the sort of thing that it's kind of the train the trainer. They'll train the staff train us. But it's not that we'll never have to utilize them again, but there'll be less reliance on them. So is that?
Yeah, but I guess my question is, if they're gonna train us to do these job descriptions and that type of stuff, if we do that information, then send it to them, I'm assuming their review is not free of charge, or is it?
No, I mean, there'll likely be a cost of some sort, but it's certainly, it's gonna be less costly, right, for them to review it than to write it. Another situation, I guess, in terms of saying it to them is if we create a new position and we need to have that banded onto our pay grid. We have the position, we create the job description, we send that to them. They'll review the job description and at our request, they would band it. But it would be far cheaper in terms of just getting them to say yay or nay, or we recommend this, opposed to contracting them to develop the job description, review it, band it, right? So
Yeah, you have.
if I hit,
Yep.
Councillor Vaughan?
One of the things that I like about their presentation is the fact that they're taking into account informing the employees of what the process is. So often I've seen these surveys go on and staff will sometimes get a completely erroneous idea of what's going on. The idea that, oh, we're going to get big increases because of whatever. Or they're saying they're out to get us somehow. They're going to, these people are coming in to do us in. They're going to get a factual, I assume, honest description of the process that we're going through and the fact that you can't predict what the results will be. Some may go up, some may go down. It's going to be whatever the reality is, it's going to hopefully come out of this process. I think that trust is extremely important.
And maybe if I'll just add in terms of, so essentially at the program launch, I'll call it, they will explain the process. There's also a built-in component whereby there's going to be an information questionnaire for the staff. Yeah. So there's the opportunity for the staff to provide their input, both within that written component, but also in terms of at the project launch. So, there's an employee engagement consultation, but you're right in terms of that doesn't affect the findings or the outcome of the report. It's simply in terms of, if the consultant is speaking with you, consultant may call you, ask for some additional information that the employee understands and knows the context for which that information is being requested. So I think personally it's an important point because it's ultimately the employees themselves. It's for the municipality, but it's also for the employees. So when you're standing next to another person, who may be in a different pay band, they understand, hopefully they'll understand a little bit more about that.
Councillor Singh.
It does say in here that during the 2018 discussion, consideration will need to be given to potentially salary adjustments. Now, I'm assuming that means up, not down, but is there a possibility that there could be a down to some employees?
Yeah, it have to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis.
But is that something that this consultant is going to provide by a case-by-case basis, or is this something we have to determine based on the legislation that they provide us?
So in terms of they'll provide a recommended pay grid for the positions. They may advise that we're overpaying. I'm just, in this one area. My thinking is that you don't necessarily drop that person in pay or those positions in pay at that moment, but you would, what we call, my experience is you red circle them. So basically you stay at that rate until you catch up. Like until the pay grid catches up to where you currently are.
Councillor Singh.
The other comment I like of this, and I think it's important that it'll also help us with our management of employees. Because I think some of this mentioned about consultation about helping us do reviews and do that type of stuff. So, I think we still need some help there with regards to proper performance management. And, it's great to have our employees engaged in this particular process, but I think our employees also need to understand performance management and how that determines certain levels of the pay band and the pay grids and all that other stuff. Because again, we need a better system day to day for performance management here at the municipality to ensure that we're getting, and the taxpayers are getting what they deserve based on the salary or the expectation that we believe. So I like the fact that they're giving us some more. It's just not, here's a document, good luck to you. I like the full approach, and it seems like they're willing to support us right from the start, right to the end, and understand that what our current situation is today and how we get it to be better from a performance management perspective. So that was just more of a comment from what I read from there, but I think that information I think is critical to the success and the delivery of this compensation and pay equity to ensure that we don't get off target again or off track again.
Any further comments? All in favor? Carried. Okay, moving to 6.7.2, OPP servicing costs. Richard?
So the recommendation from staff on this report is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receives the October 2nd, 2017 report of the CAO regarding OPP servicing costs, and further that Council directs staff to prepare a report outlining all costs to be considered for OPP municipal policing of the Wingham Ward.
Can I have a mover? Councillor Sen?
I'll move for discussion.
And Councillor Ritzman, seconds. All in favor? Or no, sorry. Discussion,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I also think as opposed to this servicing cost in this report, I think we need to incorporate all alternatives that could happen in this. I know we've got a policing cost from the OPP. We need to look at every alternative that we're doing, not necessarily is it OPP, is it status quo, is it the same, is it something else? I don't want to just focus on, I don't think the intention of this should be just to focus on the report we got from the OPP. I think we have to look at all alternatives, whether they be good, bad, or indifferent. I think they need to be looked at to make this exercise worthwhile and allow the public to have all of the facts about all the alternatives that are out there when public meetings are established, because I think there will be in my opinion, there will be public meetings, and two, I think there's going to be lots of conversation about what that looks like. I think the other part for me of this is I want the public to understand what they're paying for, and I think by us having these alternatives, they're going to understand the level of service they're getting, what they potentially could get, what they potentially won't get, and then they know. I think that's always been my point on this, and I think it still resonates with me as it's a must. This is something that hasn't been looked at since amalgamation or very close to after amalgamation. I think we need to start looking at this potential for all alternatives in the sustainability of the force. And that's not a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody in this room. It shouldn't be a surprise to anybody in the Police Services Board. We've had this discussion for a while. So I think what I'm hoping to get out of this is that report with information about other alternatives as well. And if people want to know what those alternatives are, I can say that. But I again, if there's questions from the staff about what those alternatives have been, we can talk about those at a later date. But I just want to make sure that we're just not focusing surely on the OPP cost just because we got it. We couldn't look at other alternatives while we asked for this. Now we've got it, and we've got 3 months to deal with it. So let's look at everything and figure out what is the best level of service for both North Huron, Wingham Ward, but North Huron as a whole. Because I think that's ultimately at the end of the day, we have to look at what's the best for the municipality as a whole.
Okay, I'll just make a comment. You said all alternatives, all, but we can get factual information.
Well, I wouldn't ask staff to put an alternative that they can't get information for, but there shouldn't be an alternative they shouldn't be able to get information for. At least information, whether it be from the chief or calls for service or something to that effect. Like what are the alternatives? The alternatives are OPP, leave the Wingham Ward as it is, or have the Wingham Police Service patrol the entire municipality. Those are the three alternatives. That's the only alternatives that I see. But we need to look at all of them, and not just. And I know that's
possible.
And I know it's been a contentious issue with East Wallinosh and Blythe about that the third alternative. But I think we still need to look at it. As much as it's gonna throw everybody in a tizzy, it has to be looked at. I'm not suggesting it's gonna go through, but we need to look at it. Everybody gotta look at it and see what it does to affect our budget and taxes and all that other stuff. Because that is what we have to look at.
That it was just all alternatives. Somebody might try to think up something that may not be able to be backed up by information, and that was the only thing I was questioning. That you have clarified what you meant by all. So thank you very much for that clarification. Councillor Vaughan.
On the 25th, I raised a question about the possible effects of the change on our policing costs in the other two wards. And it was made clear that they were not prepared to discuss anything beyond the confines of Wingham. So I'm wondering if they're hesitant to provide any additional information, does the staff see any difficulty in trying to make a decision, which obviously needs to take into account the total implications of the change? Are the OPP being very secretive about a number of areas? Are we going to have difficulty getting enough important facts that we can make a rational and convincing decision on this?
Well, I think one of the, so the Wingham, under the Police Services Act, right? So the OPP have provided a servicing cost based on Section 10 of the Police Services Act, which is basically Police Services Board and things like that. The service that is currently being provided to Blythe and East Wallinosh is under Section 5.1 of the Police Services Act. So in terms, and what they were asked to provide costing on under Section 10 for the Wingham Ward. So, I mean, in terms of, we can certainly look at, in terms of the existing proposal they put on the table, in terms of in the report, it does speak to in terms of maintaining the existing OPP. But the report, it doesn't speak to expanding the Wingham service into the Blythe and the East Wallinosh Ward, but we could certainly pull that information together and provide that information as well. In terms of the OPP, if we wanted them to, they were asked to provide a serving cost for the Wingham Ward. I mean, if one option is we could go back to them and ask them to do a costing, for, if we wanted to do a Section 10 and we wanted that to include the Blythe and East Wallinosh, we could go back and ask for that. It would, start the process. I have to talk to the OPP, but I think, we'd be starting the process over But that's certainly not, if that's council's wish, we can certainly explore that with the OPP.
Councillor Vaughan.
That's a return question. It seems to me that it would seem likely that if we took this approach, there would be some synergy in terms of OPP covering Wingham and the other area, even though they're under different legislative statements. And anyway, it seems to me that we would need to consider some of those differences, and if they're not going to do that kind of blue skying, that could be a difficulty in making a good decision.
Councillor Sun.
So the way I interpret it is, at this point, if after we make a decision on this particular costing, if we so choose as council to request them to do a section 10 for Blythe and East Wabash, we could do that. That would require Police Services Board and all that other stuff to be inclusive of that cognizant, but we'd have to request it. It's always been a section 5.1. It has been for a while. So if we were to go with the OPP, they're not going to change their section because the one ward in the municipality is section 10. Those municipalities are 5.1 unless you request something different. They're going to stay the same. And so that, I think in my mind, it's up to us to make that discussion after, because there's no guarantee that we're going to go with the OPP. So, I think it's a conversation that once we get to the finish line, we can ask them to do that if we want. But again, I think at the end of the day, that would be no different than the conversation about Veolia and Morris Turnberry in the water. It's no different, and we can open those discussions later. So I think it's the same thing. You're going to have to ask them to do that if you want change. They're not just going to do it.
Councillor Sun.
The other comment I did want to mention that I did have a conversation with the detachment commander after the meeting, and I mentioned to him that, the proposal that they put in front of us, one of the concerns from a perspective, at least from what I seen after thinking about it during the meeting, was it's great to give us the 3-year plan. And Dwayne has mentioned that in his report, but we need to know what year 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 are. You have and I said this to them, you as the OPP have a billing model that you are using today. We have a calls for service information that you determine your pricing on. Put those calls for service in your billing model and tell us what it's going to be. I know it's not going to be bang on, but at least it'll give us a sense of, because what I will tell you is the math doesn't work from when they talk about $355 of property to what the Wingham Ward currently is paying per property today based on our dollars. Their math and our math are not the same. So the question becomes is, are we gaining any efficiencies? If you look at the numbers, there isn't. There isn't at all. The conversation is, what does year 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 look like? That's, I think, the real answer. And I'm not sure whether they're going to give us that answer. But I said, you have to sell this, OPP, because I know that what you're telling us to sell isn't a sale right now, just from what I'm telling, based on the information that we got at that meeting.
So just in terms of, as you've mentioned, there's a tool. So essentially what they presented at the public meeting was what they call the 3-year transitional contract. And then there's a tool on their website that is available to municipalities where you put in information, it will project for you your billing costs beyond that 3 years. Bearing in mind that you'll have things like consumer price index, that needs to apply appropriately. What the recommendation here is, in terms of on the basis that council wishes to proceed with investigating OPP servicing for the Wingham Ward, recommendation here is to look at all those costs and for staff to come back with not only, what the cost will be for servicing beyond year 3, but also in terms of, the existing service, in terms of dissolving it, in terms of, what that all involves. And then when we come back with those numbers, the OPP have offered to come back and they'll do a 1-hour presentation on their model, on their OPP billing model, which basically will explain the numbers past year 3, so the 4, 5, 6, and beyond. They'll come back and do a 1-hour presentation with council for that. And then further to that, they've offered to come back and do a public meeting, at least one, and it'd be up to council in terms of more than that, and to answer questions of the public, and if council has questions at that point as well. So, in terms of the process, when you get to a point, or if you want to reach a point in terms of making a decision, you'll have the numbers, the 3-year numbers, the past 3 years numbers. You'll understand the numbers that you have in front of you, and you'll also have the benefit of the public comments and the public input. So if that's of any help or not.
Councillor Vaughn.
So are we at a point where we could very soon ask them for that 1-hour meeting, that presentation?
My suggestion is not.
No.
I think that we have, if council directs tonight, we will start working on those numbers and bring back a report with those numbers in it. Let you see the numbers, and then my suggestion in the next report, the recommendation would be to invite the OPP to come and to speak to the numbers from the OPP numbers in terms of their billing model. So.
Great.
Just for clarification, we are talking 2 different levels of service.
Correct.
Because I was intent maybe that they were going to give the same level of services as Blythe and East Wash, but that's quite clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5.1 and then
Yeah,
under
right.
section 10.
I just wanted to verify that.
All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, 7.1, Richard.
7.1 is a request for donation from St. John's Ambulance, and the motion or suggested recommendation for that is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the correspondence from St. John's Ambulance for information purposes, and further that Council direct staff to provide St. John's Ambulance with the necessary donation request forms.
Councillor Metzger, Councillor Syme. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Moving to 8.1, the Reeves activity report. Basically, from our last council meeting, everything was working towards stuff at the international plowing match at Walton, and thanks to the ones that did the work on the township exhibit there. That there was too many hours spent working there, but I believe we showed Huron County and the township off well. So thank you very much for all those. And I think I will move to council member reports if anybody has some. Okay. As James wasn't able to be here tonight, There will be a notice of motion in the next meeting. And moving to bylaws. Go ahead, Trevor.
Sorry, I just wanted to mention, that I just wanted to follow up question that, in our procedural bylaw, we had a request once a year for a public meeting. And we haven't scheduled one for this year as of yet. We had one I think it was last October or whatever, in Blythe at the ESCC. We haven't scheduled one. I think it's I guess in our best interest to get that scheduled as soon as possible so that we can, and I would prefer it to be at least done before budget deliberations so we can have what the public is looking for us as elected representatives to do. So I think that would be interesting for us and the staff to get sure we get that scheduled for maybe the next meeting, bring some dates back to see when we can have that.
Very good idea, thank you. Okay. Bylaw number 86, 2017. Being a bylaw to authorize the Region Clerk to sign on behalf of council a memorandum of understanding between the Corporation of the Township of North Huron and the Almost Famous Players for use of the Wingham Town Hall Theatre. And so that read a first and second and third and final time, signed by the Region Clerk and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Do I have a mover? Councillor Syke, Councillor Ritzman-Dominga. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Bylaw number 87, 2017. Being a bylaw to establish an economic development committee as a committee of council for the Township of North Huron and to authorize a terms of reference for the Economic Development Committee. That this being introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Region Clerk and engrossed in the bylaw book.
So moved.
Okay. Councillor Vaughn, Councillor Ritzman-Dominga. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Any announcements? Okay. No other business? No closed session? Okay. Bylaw number 88, 2017. Let you read it.
Sure. That bylaw 88, 2017, being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Township of North Huron, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Region Clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Good mover. Right, Councillor Hallahan, Councillor Vaughn. All in favor? Carried. Okay. The all-important motion of the.
Motion to adjourn.
Councillor Vaughn. Seconder, please. And Councillor Ritzman-Dominga. All in favor? Carried. We're done.